Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on the chapter The Divine and the Undivine, page 409, beginning with the sentence, "All this may be true up to a certain point."
As usual, we will see what he has said in the previous para so that we get the continuity. So, he has told us that the first solution to this problem of undivine, the pain, suffering, perversion, death, all these things, the ascetic says that this is all illusion. So, there is nothing to bother about. So, that's solution number one, which is not acceptable to Sri Aurobindo. Okay.
So how can they say this? How can they say this? From the physical mind? From the higher mind?
The moment you change your consciousness and go up, you see it as an illusion.
So they're in the spiritual planes of consciousness.
Yes, that's right.
When they say
So,
this.
you see, you are looking at it in the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And even when two people are looking at one event, they won't see it the same way.
Right.
So, these people say that you are looking at it the wrong way. There's nothing there. So, that's solution number one. Solution in double quotes.
Yeah.
Now, the second solution is what we are going to see now. Okay, so he says, there is another possible solution to the problem. We may admit the divine presence in all things, and we may say that man's view and understanding of the universe, is defective. It is too limited, mental, ignorant. We try to set up our ignorance as a perfect standard of judgment. We think that with our mind we can judge perfectly. It can be said that not only is the secret indwelling divine perfect in itself or in himself, but even each thing is perfect in its place and significance in the totality, and it fulfills its function to perfection. Everything has got a meaning and a place, and everything is working fine. Man does not see the whole and thus misses the real significance of each thing. The nature of each thing is exactly what its function in the universe demands. Our condemnation of imperfect things is itself ignorant, partial, blind to the totality. We don't see the totality, and therefore we are making a judgment, mistaken judgment. Perfection cannot be in the part. It can be found only in the whole. So if you see the whole, then you will see that what you are seeing, suffering, pain, death, etc., you will see it in a totally different way. So there is nothing undivine. Everything is divine. That's the solution. But this also is not acceptable to Sri Aurobindo, because he will now discuss it.
When it's an illusion.
Now, this, what we read just now, is very interesting, because from a certain angle it's true.
Yeah.
Mother says that everything is in its correct place. So that's why Sri Aurobindo said in the beginning that in a certain sense we can admit. Okay, there is another possible solution to the problem. We may admit the divine presence in all things, and we may say that man's view and understanding of the universe is defective because it is limited.
So then how do we understand wars? We know
Everything.
that
Why only
are
wars?
pushing us.
Everything that you see here, you are not seeing it in the right way. The war also is part of that. War is if you want to see it in the right way, it's the working out of something better by elimination and process of working. That's what they would say.
I'm thinking of the Ukraine and Russia.
At our level, this is a problem. But when you go to the spiritual plane of consciousness, you see all these things in a different way. Now we'll read the para that we have to read today.
Okay.
Now, Sri Aurobindo is admitting, all this may be true up to a certain point and so far as it goes. But this also, as a solution, this also is a solution incomplete by itself, and it cannot give us an entire satisfaction. I'll read the whole para, we'll come back to it. It takes insufficient account of the human consciousness and the human view from which we have to start. It does not give us the vision of the harmony it alleges, and so it cannot meet our demand or convince, but only contradict by cold intellectual conception our acute human sense of the reality of evil and imperfection. It gives too no lead to the psychic element in our nature, the soul's aspiration towards light and truth and towards a spiritual conquest, a victory over imperfection and evil. By itself, this view of things amounts to little more than the facile dogma which tells us that all is right because all is perfectly decreed by the divine wisdom. Okay? So, note the language, huh? It amounts to little more than a facile dogma.
Yes.
We'll dwell on that, which tells us that all is right.
All that is
that
right.
All that is right.
Yes.
All that exists is right. Because all is perfectly decreed by the divine wisdom. Okay? It supplies us with nothing better than a complacent, intellectual and philosophic optimism. No light is turned on the disconcerting facts of pain, suffering and discord to which our human consciousness bears constant and troubling witness. At most, there is a suggestion that in the divine reason of things, there is a key to these things to which we have no access. This is not a sufficient answer to our discontent and our aspiration, which, however ignorant in their reactions, however mixed their mental motives, must correspond to a divine reality deeper down in our being. A divine whole that is perfect by reason of the imperfection of its parts runs the risk of itself being only perfect in imperfection, because it fulfills entirely some stage in an unaccomplished purpose. It is then a present but not an ultimate totality. To it we could apply the Greek saying, I don't know how to pronounce that, theos ok estin. I don't know, okay. Somebody is the master of Greek. Okay. The divine, he is translating, the divine is not yet in being, but is becoming. That's interesting. The true divine would then be secret within us and perhaps supreme above us. To find the divine within us and above us would be the real solution. To become perfect as that is perfect, to attain liberation by likeness to it, or by attaining to the law of its nature, sadrishya sadharmya. So this is very interesting, and he himself has told us facile dogma, philosophic optimism. Okay, I like to use the words shallow optimism. Okay, so this is a very interesting reference also to this. So we'll have a look at what he's saying. Although it is true to a certain extent, it's true. When you go to a certain level, you see that everything is in place and it has got a function and it is meant to be like that. So even pain and suffering has got a purpose and it's designed in that way. So there is a truth to it. But still you have to explain why this pain is necessary at all. So this is what he's saying. So Srimad says, all this may be true up to a certain point and so far as it goes. But this is also a solution incomplete by itself, and it cannot give us an entire satisfaction. It's very obvious, because suppose you tell a man who is suffering intense cancer pains, you tell him that everything is fine, God is there and there's nothing wrong. He is going to give you one big slap. The cancer is real, the pain is real. So Srimad is saying it's not satisfactory at all. So suppose somebody, it happened, I know of a schoolboy in Calcutta. Okay, he went to school and he came back. There was an epidemic of cholera in Calcutta at that time. This boy goes to school, he comes back, and both his parents are dead. Now, are you going to tell him that everything is fine? So Swami is saying not satisfactory at all. This boy who lost his parents like that used to work with us in the
in the press.
Tarapodo. He used to look after the binding section. It really happened. Or the other case, Doraiswami Iyengar. He was the one who.
Doraiswami, yeah.
Yeah, Doraiswami Iyengar. So his grandchild, 9-year-old, okay, got run over by a truck. Are you going to tell the mother that everything is fine?
Then what do you tell them?
You can't say anything. That's what Swami is saying.
That's
It is not satisfactory.
Right.
The solution is not satisfactory.
Right.
Then it tells you why. It takes insufficient account of the human consciousness. If you see, apart from the human consciousness, everything is fine. But if you include the human consciousness, it is suffering, the pain, and okay, so human consciousness and the human view from which we have to start. Okay, it does not give us the vision of the harmony; it alleges. You are saying everything is fine, but I don't see that. Okay, so it does not give us the vision of the harmony; it alleges, and so it cannot meet our demand or convince, but only contradicts by cold intellectual conception our acute human sense of the reality of evil and imperfection. That's real to us. Okay, so it gives too no lead to the psychic element in our nature. Now that's an interesting thing what he's pointing out. The psychic element is divine. And the psychic is saying, I am not satisfied with this. I want perfection. So this solution is not any solution at all. Okay, so the psychic element in our nature, the soul's aspiration towards light and truth and towards a spiritual conquest. Okay, a victory over imperfection and evil. Why would the psychic being which is divine want to get away from this imperfection if everything was perfect? So naturally it's not. The solution is up to a certain point, but it's not valid at our level. There is pain and suffering and there is evil which is true. Okay. So, by itself, this view of things amounts to little more than the facile dogma which tells us that all that all that is right, because all is perfectly decreed by the divine wisdom. There is an element of truth in it, but it's not satisfactory. It supplies us with nothing better than a complacent intellectual and philosophic optimism. Okay? Now, I'll stop there because there is a very interesting thing which can be said about this. Robert Browning, wrote a poem, Pippa Passes. You know about it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there, what he says, it's a reflection of this facile dogma and cavalier optimism. Okay? It's very easy to say that. Very easily you can dismiss. So what he's saying, the years at the spring and the day at the morn, mornings at 7, the hillsides dew pearled, the lark is on the wing, the snail is on the thorn, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world.
Yeah. Baba Bhai likes him very much.
Who?
Our ashram poetry teacher.
So anyway, so this is what he's referring to, easy optimism.
Yeah.
God's in heaven, everything is all right. The bird is flying,
all's right with the world.
Dew is there, everything is beautiful. What are you worried about? So this is the reference, okay? So because all is perfectly decreed by the divine wisdom. It supplies us with nothing better than a complacent intellectual and philosophic optimism. no light is turned on the disconcerting facts of pain, suffering, and discord to which our human consciousness bears constant and troubling witness. Okay. At most, there is a suggestion that in the divine reason of things, there is a key to these things to which we have no access. So, that's it. He's saying that. You can accept that. This is not a sufficient answer to our discontent and our aspiration, which, however ignorant in their reactions, however mixed their mental motives, must correspond to a divine reality deeper down in our being. A divine whole that is perfect by reason of the imperfection of its parts, because it fulfills entirely some stage in an unaccomplished purpose. It is then a present but not an ultimate totality. To it we could apply the Greek saying, and the translation is, the divine is not yet in being but in becoming. So in the physical world there is becoming and there is pain and suffering. But if you go to the divine in being, you will see that there is no suffering. That's what is meant. The true divine would then be secret within us and perhaps supreme above us. To find the divine within us and above us would be the real solution. To become perfect as that is perfect. To attain liberation by likeness to it or by attaining to the law of its nature. Sadrishya sadharmya. So, he has given the solution, he has given his comment and not satisfactory. So, how to explain this evil? And we go to the next para. If the human consciousness were bound to the sense of imperfection and the acceptance of it as the law of our life and the very character of our existence, a reasoned acceptance that could answer in our human nature to the blind animal acceptance of the animal nature, then we might say that what we are marks the limit of the divine self-expression in us. We might believe too that our imperfections and sufferings worked for the general harmony and perfection of things, and console ourselves with this philosophic balm offered for our wounds, satisfied to move among the pitfalls of life with as much rational prudence or as much philosophic sagacity and resignation as our incomplete mental wisdom and our impatient vital parts permitted. Okay. Or else, taking refuge in the more consoling fervours of religion, we might submit to all as the will of God in the hope or the faith of recompense in a paradise beyond, where we shall enter into a happier existence and put on a more pure and perfect nature. But there is an essential factor in our human consciousness and its workings which, no less than the reason, distinguishes it entirely from the animal. There is not only a mental part in us which recognizes the imperfection, there is a psychic part which rejects it. Our soul's dissatisfaction with imperfection as a law of life upon earth, its aspiration towards the elimination of all imperfections from our nature, not only in a heaven beyond where it would be automatically impossible to be imperfect, but here and now in a life where perfection has to be conquered by evolution and struggle, are as much a law of our being as that against which we revolt. They too are divine, a divine dissatisfaction, a divine aspiration. In them is the inherent light of a power within which maintains them in us, so that the divine may not only be there as a hidden reality in our spiritual secrecies, but unfold itself in the evolution of nature. So we'll go back to what he's saying now. So he's He's made the point already that the divine itself here is not satisfied with what is there. There is aspiration, and the soul is saying, I can't stand this imperfection. And the soul is divine. So there is a problem, and we have to answer that. Okay, so now he is saying, if the human consciousness were bound to the sense of imperfection and the acceptance of it as the law of our life and the very character of our existence, I am reading without the parenthetical phrase. I read it again. I'll read it without the parenthetical phrase. If the human consciousness were bound to the sense of imperfection and the acceptance of it as the law of our life and the very character of our existence, then we might say that what we are marks the limit of the divine self-expression in us. Okay. I'll stop here. And he's saying, parenthetically, a reasoned acceptance that could answer in our human nature to the blind animal acceptance of the animal nature. So, he's saying that if our imperfection were permanent here, then there is a problem. But it is not permanent. There is a way to go up. So,
and we don't accept it as permanent.
Pardon?
We don't accept it as permanent.
That's right, yeah. But some do.
Some do.
Like the ascetic. So he goes away.
Yeah.
He says this is permanently imperfect and solution is there. But Srimdev is arguing because he doesn't believe and he wants the imperfection here also to go away.
Yeah.
That's the whole stress is on that. Okay? There are many who say, the dualistic philosophies all say that. Perfection is there, it can never be here. This is anti-divine.
But they want to perfect themselves in another way.
Yes, they want to have perfection there.
Right.
But not here.
Right.
It's there in all religions. Even Islam also you have this.
Yeah.
All that you're suffering here, there will be no suffering. You know what they say. Okay, so a reason so. This is what he's saying. Then we might say that what we are marks the limit of the divine self-expression in us. In other words, we are going to remain imperfect here. The divine can't do anything more than this. So if you want the divine, go to the next house. This house is imperfect, go to the next house. Okay? But Srimdev is saying, no, this house is not imperfect. We can change it. That's the whole point. Then we might say that what we are marks the limit of the self-expression in us, divine self-expression. We might believe too that our imperfections and sufferings worked for the general harmony and perfection of things and console ourselves with this philosophic balm offered for our wounds. Philosophic balm. Satisfied to move among the pitfalls of life with as much rational prudence or as much philosophic sagacity and resignation as our incomplete mental wisdom and our impatient vital parts permitted. This word, sagacity, it means the capacity to discriminate wisdom and deep insight.
Yes.
That's what it means. So he's saying that you could, we come back again to that existentialist philosophy. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So go about life as carefully as you can and avoid the pitfalls and the problems. Okay, so yeah. Or else, another solution to the problem, if you think that the imperfection is permanent. Or else, taking refuge in the more consoling fervours of religion, we might submit to all as the will of God in the hope or the faith of recompense in a paradise beyond, where we shall enter into a happier existence and put on a more pure and perfect nature. The Christian religion also believes that. If you do it well here, you will enjoy heaven. Okay, so but the imperfection is there. So, and also recompense in a paradise beyond. Okay, so you surrender to God and you will be recompensed. The suffering is, when you go there, there will be no suffering for you. So he's saying, he's using interesting words. He's saying, he used the word philosophic balm, no? Or consoling fervors of religion. Okay. We might submit to all as the will of God in the hope or the faith of recompense in a paradise beyond, where we shall enter into a happier existence and put on a more perfect, pure and perfect nature. But there is an essential factor in our human consciousness and its workings, which, no less than reason, distinguishes it entirely from the animal. If you are at the animal level, you can say that yes, the world is imperfect and you can go about as carefully as you can, avoid the pitfalls. But he's saying there's something more than what we have, not only reason. And what is that? The soul. There is not only a mental part in us which recognizes the imperfection, there is a psychic part which rejects it. The mind may say that what can you do about it? You can't do anything. But the psychic is saying you can do something about it. That's what he's saying. So the divine himself is not satisfied with things here. So, then why do they come into the picture? You have to explain that. That's the whole chapter. There's an essential factor in our human consciousness workings which, no less than the reason, distinguishes it entirely from the animal. There is not only a mental part in us which recognizes the imperfection, there is a psychic part which rejects it. Our soul's dissatisfaction. By the way, you can also see that he is saying that the animal does not have reason nor the psychic part. He is saying two things are there which the animal does not have. So, the beginning of a psychic can be there, or the psychic influence can be there in higher animals. Cats, for instance, they have spoken about, even dogs also, they have the beginnings of a psychic influence, but not the psychic as such. Okay, so our soul's dissatisfaction with imperfection as a law of life upon earth, its aspiration towards the elimination of all imperfections from our nature, not only in a heaven beyond, where it would be automatically impossible to be imperfect, but here and now in a life where perfection has to be conquered by evolution and struggle, are as much a law of our being as that against which they revolt. So, there is an evolution and a struggle. It's not permanently imperfect. That's what he's saying. They too are divine. Okay? Which one? The evolution and the struggle. That also is real. They too are divine. A divine dissatisfaction, a divine aspiration. In them is the inherent light of a power within, which maintains them in us, so that the divine may not only be there as a hidden reality in our spiritual secrecies, but unfold itself in the evolution of nature. So these philosophies which say that everything is fine in the world, they are not taking into account the psychic being. That's what he's saying. With the psychic being itself is saying everything is not fine in the world. Okay? Go to the next para. In this light, we can admit that all works perfectly towards a divine end by a divine wisdom, and therefore each thing is in that sense perfectly fitted in its place. But we say that is not the whole of the divine purpose. For what is only justifiable, finds its perfect sense and satisfaction by what can and will be. There is, no doubt, a key in the divine reason that would justify things as they are by revealing their right significance and true secret, as other, subtler, deeper than our outward meaning and phenomenal appearance, which is all that can normally be caught by our present intelligence. We see only appearances. But we cannot be content with that law of our being. The sign of the finding is not a philosophic intellectual recognition and a resigned or sage acceptance of things as they are because of some divine sense and purpose in them which is beyond us. The real sign is an elevation towards spiritual knowledge and power which will transform the law and phenomena and external forms of our life nearer to a true image of that divine sense and purpose. It is right and reasonable to endure with equanimity suffering and subjection to defect as the immediate will of God, a present law of imperfection laid on our members, but on condition that we recognize it also as the will of God in us to transcend evil and suffering, to transform imperfection into perfection, to rise into a higher law of divine nature. In our human consciousness, there is the image of an ideal truth of being, a divine nature, an incipient Godhead. In relation to that higher truth, our present state of imperfection can be relatively described as an undivine life, and the conditions of the world from which we start as undivine conditions. The imperfections are the indications given to us that they are there as first disguises, not as the intended expression of a divine being and a divine nature. It's a power within us, the concealed divinity that has lit the flame of aspiration, pictures the image of the ideal, keeps alive our discontent, and pushes us to throw off the disguise and to reveal, or, in the Vedic phrase, to form and disclose the Godhead in the manifest spirit, mind, life, and body of this terrestrial creature. Our present nature can only be transitional, our imperfect status a starting point and opportunity for the achievement of another higher, wider, and greater that shall be divine and perfect, not only by the secret spirit within it, but in its manifest and most outward form of existence. So, he's saying that you have to see it in the right way, and it is not imperfect at all, and it is true in a certain sense that evil and suffering are there, and you have to approach it in the right way. There's a divine element in you which can cure all this, and you are intended to cure it. You are meant to cure it. That's what he's saying.
Yes, and still accept it as necessary.
Yes.
In yourself.
Yes. It is a temporary thing.
Yes.
Imposed upon you, and it's not as it's not an absolutely unchangeable evil. It is a surface phenomena. It's the appearance of things, and the divine is there to take you up, and that's what you are meant to do. Now, those who say, like the Buddhism and the Mayavadins, that is perfection and this is, they have no solution to the problem of pain and suffering. But Swamdeva has a problem. He has a solution. He says that this is temporary, it's got a function. It is goading you up. It is taking you up.
But when Mother says that anything can be cured by faith,
Yeah.
it has to be a faith that's total and complete.
Yes.
Otherwise, cancer just takes you away.
That's right. And faith is important, and faith is there in the human being.
Yes.
Hope springs eternal in the human breast.
Man never is, but ever to be blessed.
So, so that is there. So this is what Srimad is saying. So he is saying, in a certain sense, yes, there is evil and suffering here, but it's got a function. And it's not permanent. So there is no need of thinking that this is a permanently imperfect world. The undivine elements here are superficial and they can be changed. And you are meant to change it. You have to participate in the evolution. That's what he's saying. But these conclusions are only first reasonings or primary intuitions founded on our inner self-experience and the apparent facts of universal existence. They cannot be entirely validated unless we know the real cause of ignorance, imperfection and suffering and their place in the cosmic purpose or cosmic order. There are three propositions of God and the world, if we admit the divine existence, to which the general reason and consciousness of mankind bear witness. But one of the three, which is yet necessitated by the character of the world we live in, does not harmonize with the two others. And by this disharmony, the human mind is thrown into great perplexities of contradiction and driven to doubt and denial. For first, we find affirmed an omnipresent divinity and reality, pure, perfect and blissful, without whom, apart from whom nothing could exist, since all exists only by him and in his being. All thinking on the subject that is not atheistic or materialistic or else primitive and anthropomorphic has to start with this admission or to arrive at this fundamental concept. So what is this concept? There is one ultimate reality and that is the thing. So we have to, this is one. There are other things also which he is going to mention. He says there are three conceptions. Human beings can form three conceptions of God. Okay. The first is this, that he is omnipresent divinity and reality, pure, perfect and blissful, and without whom, apart from whom nothing could exist, he is all. Advaita philosophy. Advaita. There is nothing which is undivine. Everything is divine. Okay, so divine, you have to divine in double quotes. You have to explain what that means. All thinking on the subject that is not atheistic, so he is eliminating the atheists or the materialists, or else primitive and anthropomorphic. So those who can think a little bit and who can imagine about God, okay, so has to start from this admission or to arrive at this fundamental concept. And what is that fundamental concept? Everything is, there is a divine, omnipresent divine, and he is, without him nothing can exist. So this is the first supposition. Okay? All thinkings that we read, okay. It is true that certain religions seem to suppose an extra cosmic deity who has created a world outside and apart from his own existence. But when they come to construct a theology or spiritual philosophy, these two admit omnipresence or immanence. For this omnipresence imposes itself, is a necessity of spiritual thinking. If there is such a divinity, self or reality, it must be everywhere, one and indivisible. Nothing can possibly exist apart from its existence. One and indivisible. Nothing can possibly exist apart from its existence. Nothing can be born from another than that. There can be nothing unsupported by that, independent of it, unfulfilled by the breath and power of its being. It has been held indeed that the ignorance, the imperfection, the suffering of this world are not supported by the divine existence. But we have then to suppose two gods, an Ormuzd of the good and an Ahriman of the evil, or perhaps a perfect supracosmic and immanent being and an imperfect cosmic demiurge or separate undivine nature. This is a possible conception, but improbable to our highest intelligence. It can only be at most a subordinate aspect, not an original truth or the whole truth of things. Nor can we suppose that the one self and spirit in all and the one power creator of all are different, contrary in the character of their being, separate in their will and purpose. Our reason tells us, our intuitive consciousness feels, and their witness is confirmed by spiritual experience, that the one pure and absolute existence exists in all things and beings, even as all things and beings exist in it and by it. And nothing can be or happen without this indwelling and all-supporting presence. So, it's a very complicated para, and we have to see very carefully, because he's going step by step. He's saying, first he says that there is one conception, that there is one divine, and he is the absolute, and nothing can exist without him or coming from him. Then he gives alternate suggestions. There are people who say that no, it's not like that. There is an anti-divine and there is a divine. Okay, there is something which is different. This he calls a Manichaean philosophy. So we'll look at this carefully next time, because each sentence we have to see what is
very important. I just wanted to ask about what Mother said about the emanations that she sent down that turned against what she wanted. So when she sent down love, it became hate.
Yes. That's
Good
it.
became evil.
The dualities, yes.
So what are these beings who are so negative towards evolution?
They are personalities of impersonal forces.
Personalities of
impersonal forces. We know that. There are all impersonal forces and there are personalities for each thing. Okay, so, and that is why is it coming, the dualities? Because the one is becoming the many. And when the one is becoming the many, it is becoming the many infinitely. And if it is infinitely, the opposites are obviously going to come.
Are they gods or not gods?
The gods and?
Are these beings gods?
Yes.
These emanations?
Yes, you can say that. And when we use the word God, there is an impression that the gods are perfect in every way.
But
no. There are vital gods.
Yes,
there are mental
sure,
gods.
Sure.
They are static. They are not. They are typal beings. They don't evolve.
Not changeable.
No, they don't change.
Good. Thank you, Ranga. Namaste all.